From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined as always with our super producer, Dylan, the Tennessee pal Fagan. Most importantly, you are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. Thank you for joining us tonight, folks. We had a bit of a rough ride with a previous episode on Chicago's Ripper Crew, so we're thinking of this one as a bit of a palate cleanser.
Man, I'm both bummed and not bummed that I missed that one.
Yeah, and welcome back. I've been using a new street name for you, Copenhagen Brown.
I appreciate it. I just hope people don't think that I'm like doing dips all the time, you know? The Copenhagen, isn't that like a chewing tobacco brand?
Oh, I think it is.
It might be, yeah. I'm not the demographic, but I think it sounds cool. I don't think they're...
No, I love it. Yeah. I love it. I'm here for it, and people can think whatever they want, and I had a really lovely time in Copenhagen, despite Radiohead canceling their show that I was there for. Because Tom York, speaking of conspiracy theories, now, Tom York had apparently a real bad throat infection, and my show got rescheduled, and I'm not going back, but I had a great time. Lovely Christmas markets. Great time of year to be in that part of the world.
Simply having a wonderful Christmas time.
No. Humbug.
No, I didn't say that. That's Paul McCartney.
Sir Paul?
Yeah. Paul McCartney is simply having a wonderful Christmas time. It's not my idea.
At all times. Wonderful Christmas time at all times.
The phrase is fine. Just please don't say it in that way. You know what I mean?
Simply having...
There's a great conspiracy theory about this that I enjoy, which is the narrative that song is entirely a bunch of people having pagan celebrations and lying to the authorities. So the authorities show up and then they say, we're simply having a wonderful Christmas time.
Look at all the poinsettias.
An alternate conspiracy is that it, in and of itself, is a psyop, and the most brilliant one ever perpetrated on the American people.
Whoa.
Mind control stuff, guys. Hey, have y'all ever considered the coconut? I mean, it's a legitimate question. You can do a lot with the coconut. I'm sorry, we're talking about something today that's got me very Moana coded.
Yes, this is a bit of a palate cleanser. It's one of those explorations or episodes that we looked back upon and said, wait, have we really never covered this? It's kind of a Bermuda Triangle moment for us. We're diving into something that's a little bit of hidden history, a little bit of travel, and I would say an enduring obsession for all of us in our younger, wilder years. This is the story of the mysterious sculptures of Rapa Nui, often called Easter Island.
Yeah, you know it because of the statues. So we're kind of focused a little bit on those today, right?
You may also know it as an UNESCO World Heritage Site, I believe. And isn't it also one of the wonders of the modern world?
It definitely should be.
Oh, dang it.
Yeah, it definitely should be.
What a snub.
Well, we also know that the idea of what doth a wonder make is pretty arbitrary throughout history.
I've often wondered that myself.
Yeah, we've got a whole series of that on Ridiculous History. Check it out. For now, journey with us, folks. Imagine we're in a boat, the waves are rising, and we see there in the distance a little piece of land in the middle of nowhere. What's that on the horizon? Why, it looks like a giant person with a very big head. Okay, we'll be back. Here are the facts. All right, we're going to use the phrases Easter Island and Rapa Nui interchangeably because most of the outside world uses the term Easter Island, but the original inhabitants call it Rapa Nui.
That's right, and I mentioned the Moana bit because I believe the fictional island that film takes place on is called Motunui, and seems to be it's definitely a reference to the Polynesian heritage and culture of this part of the world.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Yeah, because I believe Rapa Nui means Great Rapa, It's also been called Te Pito Te Henwa. We're not native speakers here. That translates in English to navel of the world, but the name you probably know it best by, folks, statistically, is Easter Island. And that doesn't come from the people who live there. That comes from the first Europeans that we know made it over to the island. They were Dutch. They reached it in 1722, and they reached it on Easter Day. So in an entirely not self-absorbed way, they named the whole island after the day they reached it. They did not ask the locals. It's like showing up to someone else's town on a Tuesday and saying, oh, this is Tuesdayton.
Hell yeah, European conquistadors / explorers.
Well, isn't that funny too? The way like things like that just stick. Like we did an episode of Ridiculous History about the origins of the iced cream sundae, and that had everything to do with the fact that it originally just was like a special that came out on a Sunday.
Yeah, for
Dude.
Weird religious reasons.
Exactly.
So, guys, the original inhabitants.
Yes.
I found a couple sources that said there had only been human inhabitants on the island for about 900 years. I guess before that, or I guess at this point, 900 years ago. But did you guys find that there was a later date than that?
Yeah. We'll get into that in depth here. And I'm glad you're bringing that up because there's still, this is a slight spoiler, but one of the big reveals of this episode is going to be all the mysteries we bring up continue. And there's new amazing research that keeps reframing the conversation or the exploration. And we could posit that part of the reason this research is still ongoing, part of the reason these various mysteries we're exploring still continue here in 2025 as we record on Friday, December 5th, is because Rapa Nui is so far away from everything else. And it is tiny. If you pull up your favorite Big Brother internet map of choice, you'll see this thing is only 63 square miles in size. It's in the eastern part of the Pacific Ocean, and it is so gosh darn far away from everything. When the Dutch first got there, they said, okay, these native inhabitants live a life similar to that of other folks we know of in other parts of Polynesia, with a big difference. This place is riddled with statues, monolithic sculptures, ruins, the Europeans occasionally speculated, of a once great civilization that must have fallen in antiquity. And of course, being Europeans of their day, they said, oh, this must mean that some ancient group of Proto-European people got here first. Because who else would build this? Same stuff they said about the Sphinx and the pyramids.
Bit of an Anglo-centric view, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure, Noel. Yeah. And post-European arrival, this harkens back to our episode on uncontacted peoples and tribes. After the Europeans figured out this thing existed, stuff went pretty tough for the local people. New diseases arrived. Later in the 1860s, Peruvian forces would launch straight-up slave raids, and that's also contributed to a massive migration drain. Locals were saying, okay, I got to get out of here. I know everything else is far away, but I'm going to try to go to Tahiti. And as a result, when the Dutch got there, there were an estimated 2,000 to 3,000 people on Rapa Nui. But by 1877, because of all these factors, there were only 111 native people alive.
111 souls. That's not very many.
That's the rate of attrition.
Well, I mean, it is improving, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, and now, okay, so fast forward, it's 1888. Chile conquers the island, annexes it, similar to what the U.S. would later do with Hawaii in the 1950s. And this situation continues today. Easter Island, Rapa Nui, is a dependency of Chile, but it may as well be on a different planet. It's actually, do you guys remember the Pitcairn Islands? We've never been, but.
I don't know about them, no.
Oh man, that's its own stuff they don't want you to know. It's an island of partially Tahitian descent and partially mutineer descent from back in the day. And it had an intergenerational continuing sex scandal. And it's technically part of England for some reason. But anyway, that place is also isolated in the middle of nowhere, and Rapa Nui is so far away that it is closer to Pitcairn Island than it is to Chile. It's like 1,200 miles from Pitcairn, but it's 2,000 something miles away from Chile. It's tough to get to.
It's interesting, too, that the indigenous folks there were not granted citizenship of Chile until nearly a century later in 1966.
Has the population increased?
I think that's the
again,
idea,
back
right?
up, I guess.
I believe it's doing. They're on the ups. Yes.
If you look at the, I guess a map from above of this island, you can just see that there aren't a ton of great places to live on the island. I mean, there's some really nice areas. It's just a lot of it is volcanic rock, and that huge crater that's there from a volcanic crater that we're going to talk about later with quarrying and everything. But when I was trying to imagine around 3,000 people on that island at one time, that felt like a lot to me.
Yeah, it definitely was. And now, as far as we can tell, at least from the 2017 census, Rapa Nui has a population of a little less than 8,000 people, something like 7,750 now. And that's only possible because of international trade.
That's right. And as we mentioned before, European contact, it was only around 3,000 before that precipitous drop. So, doing comparatively well.
Yeah, which will go into our ideas or the concepts we have to explore limited resources and population control. I mean, this is still, again, by any measure, one of the most remote inhabited islands on the world. We talked about it a little bit off air. As we remember, I had the misfortune and lack of foresight to get so close to visiting Rapa Nui back in 2019 at the dawn of the world locking down for the pandemic. So instead of actually making it over there, you can only fly out from Chile at certain times of the year. Guys, I ended up racing back to the Santiago airport to try to make it out of the country before they shut down their borders. It was dicey.
And you'd never made it, and you're still there right now today.
And I never made it, and I'm still there right there today.
But that's interesting. So it was just going to be a flight from where you were in Chile to the island?
Yeah. So a flight out of Santiago is usually going to be how most modern outsiders arrive to Easter Island. And it can only happen specific times a year. That's when they offer it. But
I'm sorry, last question. I imagine there's a lot of tourism on the island. So is there a pretty good infrastructure as a visitor when you go there to stay in a place for a while?
Now there is a much more robust infrastructure because people do travel there, despite it being so cartoonishly remote. If you get over there, you're going to go for several reasons, right? There are a lot of people who go there for scientific research. There are a lot of folks who go there for personal curiosity, even to the degree of people who may have ancestry from there, right? But they are now part of the diaspora, so they have returned to learn more about their ancestry. And then, of course, quiet part out loud, a ton of people are there to see the statues in person, the moai.
Because they're mysterious as all heck. Why? Why these? Why this? Why did you face it this way?
Why do they look like that? Whose face is that? What are we doing?
And how did they get there, right? That was, at least for a long time, I remember when we're growing up with those book series, right, and everything.
Mysteries of the Unknown, Shout Out Time Life, yeah.
How did they get to where they are on the island? And again, why there?
Because they're structurally, massive, and the way tons. They're 10 to 20 feet tall. Some of them are even bigger than that, and there's a lot of them.
Yeah, hundreds that we know of, and several of them also are still standing or have been re-erected on equally mysterious, huge stone platforms called ahu. So for centuries, ever since the first Europeans stumbled across the place, they and everyone who came after them were mystified by these gigantic stone statues, by these moai. And so people have always obsessed about this stuff. Who built them? How did they build them? When did they build them? To some of the questions you were raising there, Matt. And also, perhaps most importantly, why did they build them and why did they stop?
Yeah. Think about how much effort it would take to make one of those things, right? That's the concept. And then these people chose to make that many? There's got to be some serious significance to these things.
Mm-hmm. And so tonight, we're tackling the mystery. Join us. We'll be back after a word from our sponsors. Here's where it gets crazy. All right, to answer these questions or attempt to tackle them and unravel some of this mystery or carve out the stone of this mystery, maybe we start by learning a little bit more about the maoi themselves. I feel like it is an assumption, but I feel like pretty much all of us who are tuning in tonight are familiar with the iconic pictures of the Easter Island statues, right?
Very large foreheads, very large sloping noses.
Yeah, stoic expression.
Mm-hmm.
They differ in size and location. They're usually going to be the ones that were moved from their quarry site, which we'll get to. They're usually going to be along the coast. They're going to be facing in toward the interior pretty often. And they're rocking a stoic expression. About 3/8 of the entire statue is this enormous, elongated, somewhat rectangular head.
Yeah. And as you were saying, Ben, they're mostly facing in, but there are some that are facing out, right? Which leads to that mystery. It seems like they would all be facing the direction of the important thing that they symbolize, whatever this would be. This is imagining we're one of these European explorers, especially, that stumbles upon these, right? Why would you even have a choice of facing it some different direction?
Yeah, exactly. What is the significance of that placement? In the visages of these sculptures, this is interesting. We see a great commonality, not just the fact that although they vary in size and weight, they also vary in placement and so on. But the fact that they all have such similar expression also shows us a connection to other Polynesian cultures. You got the minimalist style. The heads are probably so big because there's this common Polynesian belief that the head is a center of sanctity. So you're kind of prioritizing that in the construction. Whomever we're building these things in memory of, it's meant to make them look good and say, hey, these were impressive people. At least that's our assumption. They're squatting. They have arms resting in different positions, but they don't have legs.
Never legs. Not allowed.
Legs are too far.
But maybe legs? Didn't I see a thing that maybe they had legs?
That was one of the early mysteries about the thing. Like, is this statue, because many of them were in the earth, right?
Buried about up to what looks like the shoulders, yes.
So there was this imagining that, if we excavate this thing, we're going to get a full humanoid statue, right? That was a long time ago. We found out that, it is almost like there's detail on many of them that goes down past those shoulders, past this area, but not much, right?
Right, yeah, nailed it. I mean, current research argues that most, if not all of these were created sometime between 1250 or 1200 CE and 1500 CE. So this means they had been standing, and in some cases they had fallen or been knocked over for centuries before there was any meaningful contact with the outside world. That goes back to something we teased a bit in the beginning here. For a long time, people would look at these statues and say, okay, we can guess they were made in, insert this time period. But how did the people who carved them, how did these sculptors get to the island in the first place, right? Because they had to come from somewhere. It's just too far away from other sites of natural human evolution. So for a long, long time, researchers said, okay, the people that we call the Rapa Nui, or the original native inhabitants of this island, they got there around 800 CE. But if you fast forward in 2007, you'll see studies that make a pretty good case. They didn't get there in 800 CE, but much later in 1200, which is, again, exactly when we believe the construction of the original statues began.
Isn't that interesting? What do you guys think is more plausible? A group of humans arrives on a remote island like that and immediately begins building, some statues of significance, or the concept of building the statues is grown after several hundred years of a civilization being there?
I think it's that one, Matt. That seems most likely. They'd have to have, I don't know, some shared experience and to kind of have time to assemble that much lore, I guess, around it.
Well, God, I would argue actually for the 1200 arrival date, just from the studies and the oral history that we're going to talk about a little bit, which is kind of a mixture of genealogy, lineage, historical record, and then myth making and propaganda for sure. But it feels to me like if you look at, or not to me, but based on the studies that we were reading for this, it feels like the statues have so much in common with other similar Polynesian practices that they probably landed there and got cracking.
Okay. That's a good point. I guess, yes, they would have already had a lot of those beliefs in place for sure.
I think I agree with you, Ben. From the studies, the interesting thing that's arising there is we're about to talk about it in the construction of these things. It was thought for a long time that this was one big Herculean effort that everybody got together to do, right? But the more we're learning that, maybe these statues were actually constructed by much smaller groups for their own individual groups' purposes, which makes me just personally move a little bit away from that concept that they all arrived together and then this was the thing that you do. But maybe my thinking is a little wrong there. I'm just not sure yet.
Yeah, let's get to this because these are great questions. Let's say we're random explorers or we are shipwrecked and we somehow end up on Rapa Nui. When we look at these things, they're weighing 14 tons on average, but the tallest weighs 80 plus tons. The heaviest weighs in at 86 tons, a real bruiser. And you would have to say, how did these things get here, especially if you're on the coast? 63 miles square is not a big deal in the size of the world overall, but if you're a human and you're standing on the coast, you're going to just see a stunning statue or series of statues, and you're going to have no idea where they came from. It looks like they kind of sprouted out of the rock in some cases or sprouted out of the ground. And this is where we get to the immensely impressive details of construction. It reminds me a lot of the other stuff we see in archaeology, something called experimental archaeology, like that famous clip of the guy who's trying to build Stonehenge by himself or demonstrating the methods you could use with simple technology to create this stuff.
And he was really effective at it, if I recall. I remember those videos. And it often, at least in the construction here, we're talking about bollards, right? Or yards. I don't know how to say it correctly or where it even stems from.
Bollards is good.
The posts in the ground staggered in certain ways so that you could actually end up rolling a statue down, like from a large, let's say, quarried hill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And these statues, by the way, are all carved from pretty much the same thing, a substance called volcanic tuff, Tuff, tough stone.
Hey, I only know about that from Minecraft.
My favorite way to spell tough, too, just in any context. It's not the same as obsidian or other kinds of volcanic rock. This is made from solidified volcanic ash, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you nailed it. Upwards of 95% of all the known sculptures, please clock how we said known sculptures, comes from quarry zones at a volcanic crater called Rano Raraku. And this place is still home to a lot of what we call incomplete moai today. Like if you go to the quarry, you'll see instances where it looks like someone started carving out a new statue and then stopped somewhere in the process. Kind of like walking through a car factory and seeing a car that is partially completed.
You can see mapped images, like if you're looking at the satellite imagery of this place, and you can kind of maybe feel like you're making out statues hanging out, as we talked about, that still exist in that quarry. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah, you know, in oral traditions, which often get ignored, by the way, historically, they suggest that the maoi were carved either by this distinguished class of artisans, right, or by members of each individual clan, because the Rapa Nui at this time, they all lived in the same place, right, on the same 63 square miles, but they had individual factions, communities, people's clans, lineages. And so we know that the quarry appears to be, even per the oral history, that again, people were ignoring, the quarry was subdivided into different territories for each clan. They had their turf of carving areas. So after a statue gets completed, the locals, this is the narrative, they would painfully move it all the way from the quarry, which is in like the southwest, to the coast, to a ceremonial site. And then sometimes they would adorn it with a red stone cylinder called I can't remember the pronunciation, Pukao, Pukao, maybe. It looks for all the world like a cute red hat. If you've seen the pictures, it looks like a red hat with a brim around it. A lot of those ended up falling off over time, as we'll see. Care for the maoi declined precipitously. Later research would show, I think it was you, Noel, who mentioned obsidian. Later research would show that these things looked way different when they were originally constructed. They probably, in the carvings for the eye sockets, there was probably other material like obsidian and like a white
little adornments, kind of
mineral.
like a little detail work, right?
Yeah, it looked like they had actual eyes that were staring at something.
Oh, okay. That would have been cool to see.
Like a snowman in the coal. Yeah, I don't know.
No, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Man. That's right.
Very similar, right? And so everybody said,
Like a doll's eyes. Sorry.
like doll's eyes, yeah, like Kirsten Dunst's dead eyes.
Oh,
I said it.
She is
No,
intense. No, it's true.
It's just, yeah, we don't have to relitigate that one, but I said what I said. So this was obviously a time-intensive pursuit. You had to have huge amounts of skill, patience, and people thought huge amounts of collaboration. So naturally, one of the first questions everybody asked, from the Dutch all the way to the modern day, is why would you go to all this trouble in the first place? What would motivate you towards such an historical flex?
Well, we will explore that and much more right after a quick break to hear a word from our sponsor. And we're back. So let's start in right away on some of these answers. The first answer to the question, why would you do this? Why would you bother going to all this trouble to build some giant heads, is ancestry. Ben, you pointed out one word, ancestry. Many moai are thought to be representations and commemorations of the dead, monuments to past and present tribal leaders. These were, incredible flexes, like you put it, Ben, status symbols. Think of like, a mausoleum, marking the burial spot of a great general or something like that. We still do stuff like that to this day, honoring the dead in various ostentatious forms, depending on their stature when they were alive.
Yeah. This is very socially valuable too. Aside from the spiritual aspects of it, what you're saying there reminds me of an earlier conversation. I can't remember which show or whether it was on air, about the problematic aspect of a living person getting a statue of themselves. It feels
it's a little odd.
Doesn't it feel a little
odd? Ben, really quickly, we don't have any evidence, however, that these were burial sites, though. This would have been more just like an honoring of these individuals, not necessarily that their remains were there.
Yeah, that's a great point. We don't have a ton of evidence saying that this would be, like how a pyramid would have a VIP of that society interred within or something. We don't have evidence of that, but we do have some kind of evidence that these statues were placed purposefully for some reason. The larger the statue was, the more mana, according to the Bradstreet Foundation, or the more, the juice, the more acclaim you had as being the person who commissioned it. So some of these statues were made for leaders of communities or tribes while they were alive. Which, again, it feels weird to have a statue of yourself while you're alive. If it's someone else's idea, I guess that's fine, because it's them giving you a gift and you don't want to be a jerk about it. But if it's your idea, it's a little weird.
Which is more self-aggrandizing, a statue or a giant arch?
That's a good question. I would say it depends on the size of the statue. Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe that's part of it.
Maybe an arch-sized statue would be worse than a statue-sized arch.
Yeah. Because you're getting a little Ozymandias when you put your face on it, right? Mm-hmm. And check out our earlier strange news conversation about why this country, the United States, had to make a specific law that said no living people on the money.
Mm-hmm.
Because it all goes down to one really, really sneaky, ballsy guy at the Treasury. I forgot about that story.
It's me. I'm on the money. Look.
Exactly. Which has to, in some social situations, I guess that is impressive. But so, okay, ancestry is one answer to that question. Why build these statues in the first place? But the second question becomes, why build so very many? And that leads us to our second answer, competition. Man, these guys got mad when the people the next neighborhood over built a statue that was bigger.
Yeah, it goes back to that early concept that, oh, look, these people's constructed statues together as one thing, right? All of these peoples living on this island must be the same and of this one culture, and all did them together. And then going back to the competition aspect, it makes total sense now. And with that new framing, right? With just a little bit of time.
Yeah, now it's a matter of keeping up with the Joneses. It's an arms race of opulence and importance. It's kind of like I was reading about this in Macau, in a lot of the casinos. There's this weird thing that happens where people get VIP tables at casinos or clubs, and to show off their wealth, they start ordering expensive champagne for whatever seems like the next richest table or the next biggest table of rich people. And then those folks respond by ordering more bottles of champagne for the other table. Now, spoiler, folks, those bottles of champagne get announced, but they never actually get delivered. It is entirely just to say, look at me and the money I have. And the folks do get charged for the champagne. They just never actually get to drink it.
Oh, snap. The guys on My Mama Told Me just had a great conversation with someone about that very thing and the conspiracy of
bottle service,
of slowly draining the wealth with bottle service, and how
it's insane. The markup on alcohol already is insane, and bottle service just makes it like 10x. Oh my God, it's bonkers.
Well, and the social pressure to do it,
right.
Combined with just who is actually getting bottle service and a table, like who is actually getting a VIP table. And you're like, wait a second, it's not the like extremely wealthy people doing that.
No, it's the up and comers, or it's the people
with the Joneses pressure. Yes, sir.
Yeah, or who need to be visible, right? Like, let's say I have an album that just came out, or let's say I'm trying to popularize this. This happens especially in Atlanta, too, by the way. I'm trying to popularize this single that I once played at the club. And now here I am in person at the club it's me, Swift City, which is an old rap name I used to use.
Well, you're paying for the real estate too. You're paying for the spot and being
Yes.
seen and all of the accoutrement that goes along with it, and that, presentation of wealth and opulence.
So what we're saying is this is a very human constant, folks, around the world. And there were doubtlessly some groups at some point on Rapa Nui who maybe over-prioritized building these statues, maybe could have spent a little more time fishing, maybe already sort of predicted some agricultural issues ahead, but will be gosh darned if those people a few miles distant have a better, bigger statue than us.
It's like somebody at the edge of a huge fire just saying, "Remember me."
Witness me. Witness me. Oh, Fury Road was so good. But I mean, look, I hope we're making it clear, folks, that we all agree this might seem silly to some folks in the modern day, but it was a huge deal in the communities at the time. Mm-hmm. And before we look down our collective noses at this or other practices, we got to remember every society from ancient to modern evenings has all sorts of practices and status symbols that seem bizarre or strange to outsiders. And I want to thank you specifically, Matt, because and my mom had told me, because bottle service is a perfect example of how silly this kind of thing can become. We're using the past tense too. Here's why. The island is no longer making these unique, amazing sculptures. In fact, at some point, until quite recently, the overall narrative was that for some reason, the locals abruptly stopped making the statues altogether, abandoned the incomplete ones that had just been a few weeks previous so very important. The civilization collapsed. That's the argument. But what led to it? What happened? It's the 1800s, of course, by this point, right? We said 722, the Dutch make it over there. By the 1800s, some sources, overwhelmingly European, are saying the Rapa Nui of the modern day, you guys, they're a remnant of a greater civilization that was lost to the waves. You ever heard of Atlantis, dog? Because they called each other dog, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not quite as, extreme as that. It's sort of more, maybe not obvious, but historically consistent, just, resource extraction. It's really what it amounts to, right?
Yeah. They said, look, there are hundreds of moai out there. They're possibly in the ruins of full cities that fell beneath the waves. That hypothesis got debunked because what you just said, Noel, is much more likely to be the case.
And it's way better than having to publicly come out and say, hey, sorry for the diseases and all of the slavery stuff. Maybe instead Atlantis?
Yeah. I mean, okay, yeah, the plague is not good PR for us. So maybe, a little bit of plague, but probably Atlantis, though, probably, I think. Probably mainly Atlantis. What we found is that you have to remember Rapa Nui is not a big place. If you go to the Smithsonian as recently as 2007, when some of those other studies we mentioned published, they point out that the local people depended upon giant palms that grew on the island. However, like any other civilization, they wanted to march toward progress. They also had a growing population. They had people to feed. So they started cutting down the trees. We call it deforestation now, but they were making room for agriculture, or they were burning trees for fire, or they were making tools and instruments, like we were saying earlier, to transport statues across the island. And then when you don't have trees, erosion steps in, right? And erosion starts whittling away at the soil, and then eventually the people have to begin burning grass. So this led to a perilous situation. The palms are disappearing. People are beginning to starve. Warfare is breaking out amid these various clans. And this is war not driven by necessarily deep-seated enmity. It's driven by the fact that if these people eat, then there is less food for you. It's a terrible situation to be in. And so by the time the Dutch get there, the forest is pretty much gone. The land is virtually barren.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about up at the top of this episode. When you look at the island itself, you imagine, where would all these people live? And even right now, we're saying there's 8,000 people that occupy the land. It's astonishing. And it's only possible for the things that Ben mentioned there, getting things to that island and trading.
Yeah, unfortunately. And of those, we should mention, of those almost 8,000 people there on the island, not all of them are descendants of the original inhabitants, right? There are people...
Only about half, I believe.
Yeah. They live there. There are people who are not Rapa Nui who live there full-time, right? Not as extreme as what happened in Hawaii, but I would say a similar process. So the real villain here is not some act of the paranormal or vast hidden Atlantean Lemurian conspiracy. Instead, it seems to be what Jared Diamond, the author of Guns, Germs, and Steel, would later describe as ecocide, which is a phrase I wasn't familiar with. But.
Yeah, nor I. That's a much better term than I had said resource extraction, which isn't exactly right. Certainly some of that, like you said, Ben, making tools and, burning trees for energy and things like that. But this was just essentially them not quite understanding how delicate the balance of their ecosystem was. And so ultimately they killed it.
Wait, was competition amongst different groups there on the island what led to the problems? Are we saying competition could be bad at times?
Right, yeah. Especially when coupled with resource consumption under very harsh constraints. You know what I mean? Because it's not as if... Look, it was such an epic journey to get there in the first place, to what is considered the easternmost Polynesian island. You're in a locked room, essentially, with the technology at the time, right? Even though Polynesian cultures, pretty much by any measure, for thousands of years, they were the world leaders in navigation using the stars at sea. Even with the oral history, you would know things were a long, long way away. So you don't really have anywhere to go.
It's tough to MacGruber yourself out of some ecocide.
Right, exactly. Yes, and do check out. I was going to make up a MacGruber episode we did, but we haven't yet. We'll get there. We'll call Will Forte.
Did you guys see the Epstein Files one?
Yes,
No.
I did. I enjoyed it.
Okay.
It's a series.
It's brand new.
No, you'll like it.
Geez.
It's a series of
Okay.
sketches from one of the most recent Saturday Night Lives. And to say anything, Saturday Night Lives, whatever, to say anything else would ruin your enjoyment. But do check it out.
I'm going to go in cold. I look forward to
Yeah.
it.
Text us on the group chat. I'm sure there's a compilation on
MacGruber's
YouTube.
definitely not in them. Definitely not.
Definitely not. We're asking too many questions. So what was it? Toss me that paperclip. Let's focus on what's important. So we wanted to close this one out with something we've been kind of teasing. This is our big reveal. Research into the story of Rapa Nui continues. Just last month, in fact, new investigations indicate that humanity still has a lot to learn about the rise and fall of this statue-building era, as well as about the moai themselves. And this brings us to a professor of anthropology at Binghamton University, Carl Philip Lipo, L-I-P-O.
Matt, you were talking about this one off mic a bit and how fascinated you were by these new, was it 3D models that give you a real look like behind the curtain of all this stuff?
Oh, yes. This is Carl Philip Lipo, professor of anthropology at Binghamton University and the State University of New York. It's incredible. It's 1,000 moai statues and the quarry itself and large parts of the island that are in a high resolution 3D model. And when you pull the thing up and you look at it, which we highly recommend you do, I don't know if there's a super easy way to get to it, guys, because it's not like the best URL. I found it on phys.org, phys.org. I'll just give you that link so you can look for it. First of its kind 3D model lets you explore Easter Island statues up close. And then there's a link in there you can click on and you can find this thing, which is just, first of all, you're hit with the volcanic crater, right? When you open up this 3D model, and then you're looking at the sides of that crater that have these 30, I think 30 sites that are all separate, that are, well, they're at least separated out into individual sites. And without this 3D model, it looks like it's one contiguous thing, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. And please, folks, always support your local academics. Go to the name of the actual study is Megalithic Statue Production on Rapa Nui. And you should be able to find it on PLOS. You should be able to read it in full. It's worth your time. And like Matt was saying, it fundamentally redefines some of what we understand about this process, because they also, how cool is this? They used drones to collect all these images that they compile. And they also used something that I just learned about. It's one of my new favorite words, a process called structure for motion photogrammetry. Photogrammetry. It sounds like a weird class you would take at the Harry Potter school.
Heck yeah.
I'm a photogrammetrist. And that's where they make that 3D model. They overlap the 2D images. And this is where they find our big reveal that labor was not some kind of pyramid scheme. No bad jokes left behind. Instead of a top-down hierarchical approach where one king is ordering construction, it appears that there was this group. There was an abundance of self-organized, smaller family groups, clans, or tribes, and everybody had their turf in the quarry. They were competing with each other, and also it took way fewer people to complete and to move the statues than we assumed. It wasn't the entire island going 1, 2, 3, push. It was like 6 people going 1, 2, 3, push.
Yeah, it's like because of the use of those bollard things. That I didn't understand what these were at all. You can use that word to describe a lot of different things. One of them are the little stubby metal posts that you've seen on a wharf or something. Like if you're going to attach a boat to something, those are considered bollards. Also in traffic, they've got those same things, like the concrete ones often, or metal ones that you'll see. They just look like little posts. But if you imagine a bunch of those things and then rolling, once you're in that quarry and you finally got this huge 20-ton statue, and you can roll it down the hill with enough people, which is just, I still don't understand it.
Yeah.
I can visualize it, but then, and I guess I go back to that same guy you were describing, Ben, the dude who showed how you can turn a huge piece of stone around if you just elevate it in the right way and then build the correct wooden structures around it.
Leverage, right? It's a hell of a drug. And this is fascinating because it reminds us of one of the most amazing parts of human civilization. When people apply themselves to something, they're capable of such remarkable, extraordinary things. Without sounding too much like an old curmudgeon, but just a little bit like an old curmudgeon, these folks didn't have ubiquitous social media information pulling their focus and attention away. Their brains weren't suffering from the same degeneration that occurs when you constantly look at short-term content. Which that's not my opinion. That's a study from earlier that we can reference.
And we also, I think, experienced that firsthand. It's
man.
Real. It's very real.
Oh, yeah. Real.
It makes one want to lay supine in a quarry, like a Moai
right.
statue.
Sure. And some of those statues were not, they weren't suddenly abandoned because of a catastrophe. No one was like, the last palm tree's done. We're not going to work anymore. A lot of times, because of the material science of volcanic tuff, you would be partway through carving something out and you would run into lumps of much harder rock, which is much more difficult to carve around. Or current science speculates some of these were just rock carvings that weren't meant to be moved. It's almost like some of them were practice carvings, if you think about it. Say, okay, well, before we do the actual statue, let me make sure I get this nose right.
Or maybe, Bob passed away just before he could finish his statue. And he was our only specialist in our group. Well, crap, I guess we're done there.
Yeah, guess we got to make friends with someone else. And they're like, but I hate those guys in the next valley.
I really don't like Bob's work either. We're going to start a different one.
I find his work derivative. It looks too much like the other statues.
Can you imagine some of that? Like, kind of.
Definitely, especially because they're in competition, not cooperation. So
humans have been petty always.
Right. So Lipo's team also, this is another thing that is stunning they came away with in the research. He's calling into question that official accepted story of deforestation, resource loss, and massive collapse. He says that if you look at this with the information, the data that they have uncovered, the unfinished moai at Rano Rauraku aren't evidence of a sudden catastrophe. He says they're normal quarry operations. So as life gradually got worse, this kind of the prioritization of this historical flex started to decline because people were increasingly concerned about stuff like staying alive and eating food, hopefully at least once in a 24-hour period. This leads us to that question again. We're returning to it. What actually happened? We still don't know, but we, being modern civilization, are closer than ever before. And guys, I would posit that the biggest potential for further breakthrough on the horizon here includes leveraging new technology, like in the professor's work, as well as, and this is something I think the public's ignoring, as well as returning to those oral histories anew and using current technology to fit these narratives, to see how they compare to the forensic evidence that has been gathered and discovered. And I think we'll find, as we often do with oral history, there's a lot of astonishing truth there. There's a little bit of myth, but there's a lot of accurate information in there.
I think you're absolutely right, Ben. I do think we have to keep our minds open for learning something extra, right? As technologies advance, as some new thing is discovered there on the island that explains things. We just got to keep our minds open the way a lot of the folks did who were still exploring this idea, up until these past few years.
Absolutely. And perhaps that's where we leave it. We can't wait to hear from you folks. We hope you're having a great end of the year. Also, calendars are made up. Check out our episode on that. And we want to hear from you. So find us on the lines, call us on the phone, send us an email, etc.
Oh, please do. You can find us at the handle Conspiracy Stuff, where we exist on Facebook with our Facebook group, Here's Where It Gets Crazy, on X, FKA, Twitter, and on YouTube. We have video content for your perusing enjoyment on Instagram and TikTok. However, we're Conspiracy Stuff Show.
We have a phone number. It is 1-833-STDWYTK. Turn those letters into numbers, then give that number a call. When you call in, it's a voicemail system. Give yourself a cool nickname and let us know if we can use your name and message on the air. If you were going to make a moai statue, what would it look like? Let us know. If you want to send us an email, you can do that too. We are
the entities that read every piece of correspondence we receive. Be well aware, yet unafraid. Sometimes the void writes back. So join us. Let me put my sunglasses on here. Out in the dark. Conspiracy at iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.